Clara Anderson stood before the cracked mirror in her tiny attic bedroom, her reflection wavering in the dim morning light. At 19, she possessed a delicate beauty that felt almost cruel given her circumstances, her pale skin luminous, her deep blue eyes heavy with sorrow beyond her years, and her soft golden hair falling in graceful waves down her back. Her uncle's harsh voice echoed from below. "Clara, get down here now." She steadied herself with trembling hands before stepping away from the mirror and descending the narrow staircase. In the kitchen, her Aunt Margaret sat hunched over a chipped mug of coffee, her silvering hair pulled tight in a severe bun, while her Uncle Richard paced heavily across the floor. Without looking at her, he barked, "Sit." Clara obeyed, her heart hammering as the tension in the air pressed down on her like a storm waiting to break. Margaret's voice was sharp and flat, as she said, "You're 19 now, Clara, old enough to stop being a drain on this household." Clara whispered, "I work at the diner every day. I give you everything I earn." Richard spun toward her, his eyes cold. "That pittance? You think it pays for the food, the shelter, the clothes on your back?" Clara twisted her fingers, nervously, already knowing this moment had been coming with every cold glance and cruel whisper over the past months. "There's a man," Margaret continued, setting her mug down, "a very wealthy man who's agreed to take you off our hands." The words struck Clara like ice. "What do you mean?" she asked. Richard's voice shifted with reverence as he answered, "William Harrington. He controls half of New York's real estate empire, worth billions, and he has agreed to marry you." Clara's breath caught. "Marry me? But I don't even know him. I've never met him." Margaret snapped, "You don't need to know him. Be grateful. A man like that could have any woman, yet he chose you. Consider it the luckiest day of your life." Clara's lips trembled. "He's 49 years old." Richard gave a cruel laugh. "And what? You expect some penniless boy to give you security? Do you think anyone else wants an orphan with nothing?" Her hands shook. "Please, I don't want to marry anyone. I can work more hours. I can—" Margaret cut her off. "It's already decided. The wedding is in 3 days. His people arrive tomorrow to prepare you." The words felt like a trap snapping shut. "Why?" Clara whispered. For just a moment, Richard's expression softened with what almost looked like guilt. Then it hardened again. "Because we're drowning in debt. Harrington is paying enough to solve all our problems. This is how life works, Clara. The sooner you accept it, the better." Clara stood unsteadily, her chest tight. "I need air." Margaret called after her. "You need to grow up. This is your chance at a real life." Outside, Clara collapsed onto the rusted porch swing, her body shaking with silent sobs as the autumn wind whipped through the bare trees. She hugged her thin cardigan around her shoulders, staring up at the bleak gray sky. 3 days to say goodbye to everything she had known. 3 days before she belonged to a stranger 30 years older. 3 days before Clara Anderson would disappear forever. As the first raindrops fell, she closed her eyes and whispered to the parents, who could no longer answer, "Help me be strong enough for what's coming." Yet deep down she wondered if even the strongest prayer could prepare her for William Harrington. William Harrington stood at the towering windows of his penthouse office on the 50th floor of the Harrington Tower, his tall frame silhouetted against the glittering New York skyline. At 49, he commanded fear and respect in the business world. His silver-touched hair was perfectly styled, his charcoal suit tailored with precision, and his steel-gray eyes missed nothing. Yet today those eyes held an emotion rarely seen in him, uncertainty. His assistant, Daniel Reed, knocked lightly and entered, carrying a manila folder. "The papers you requested, sir." William turned with his usual calm expression, though a storm churned beneath the surface. Daniel placed the folder on the massive mahogany desk, revealing photographs and documents about Clara Anderson, the young woman William was to marry in 2 days. William had seen her picture before, during the negotiations with her uncle, but now as he studied her face again, he felt something twist inside his chest. She was beautiful, yes, but it was more than that. There was a fragile strength in her eyes, a quiet dignity that seemed to reach through the photograph and touch something, long forgotten in him. "Have you reconsidered, sir?" Daniel asked carefully. He had been by William's side for 15 years and was one of the few who dared to question him. William lifted Clara's photograph with uncharacteristic gentleness. "She's just a girl, Daniel. She's 19, sir, legally an adult." "Legally, yes," William muttered, turning back to the skyline. "But what kind of man marries someone young enough to be his daughter?" Daniel remained silent, letting his employer work through his own thoughts. William's voice softened. "Do you know why I agreed to this arrangement? It wasn't business. It wasn't the Anderson family's land or assets. When her uncle approached me, something stirred inside me for the first time in years. Not greed, not power. Hope. Hope that maybe I could have what other men take for granted. A family. A reason to come home." Daniel hesitated, then said quietly, "But sir, she doesn't even know you. She's being forced into this." "I know," William admitted, his jaw tight. "And that makes me a monster, doesn't it? To be so desperate for companionship that I buy a bride." "You could still call it off," Daniel suggested. William's eyes stayed fixed on Clara's photograph. "And then what happens to her? Her uncle's debts are crushing him. If it's not me, it will be someone worse. At least with me, she will be safe." Daniel saw the flicker of pain in William's features and realized this was not about power at all. "You're not doing this for yourself," he said carefully. "You're doing it to protect her. Or maybe I'm just telling myself that," William replied bitterly. He scanned her background report again. An orphan at 15 after her parents' tragic accident, taken in by relatives who treated her as a burden, working at a diner, to survive yet somehow maintaining excellent grades and dreaming of college to study literature. She volunteered at the children's hospital, reading to sick kids on weekends. Despite loss and hardship, she had held on to her compassion. "She wanted to be a teacher," William murmured, his voice tight. "She deserves a future, not this." "Or maybe you'll give her that future," Daniel countered gently. "Sir, in all the years I've worked with you, I've seen you build an empire, create thousands of jobs, donate millions to charity, but I've never seen you let yourself be happy. Maybe this is your chance." "At the expense of a 19-year-old girl," William said, almost to himself. "Then give her a choice," Daniel replied firmly. "Marry her if that's what saves her, but give her freedom. Give her the protection of your name and wealth, but also the right to walk away if she chooses." William studied him, surprised by the suggestion. "A marriage with an exit clause." "A marriage built on respect," Daniel corrected. "The same kindness you show to strangers, show it to her." William turned back to Clara's photograph and felt both fear and longing. Tomorrow, this fragile young woman would become his wife. He didn't know if he would save her or ruin her life. But one thing was certain: he could no longer return to the cold emptiness he had lived in before. "Double whatever we agreed to pay her uncle," William said suddenly. "Double, sir?" Daniel asked, startled. "Yes, and set up a trust fund in Clara's name, one she can access herself. If she decides to leave, she'll have the means to build a life on her own terms." Daniel made a quick note. "Anything else?" William's voice dropped. "Find out her favorite flowers, her favorite books, anything that will make this easier for her." As Daniel left, William remained at the window, watching the city below. The man who had conquered New York real estate now stood on the edge of something far greater and far more terrifying: love. Tomorrow he would meet Clara Anderson, and she would either become his salvation or see him as the villain of her story. Clara Anderson stood before the three-way mirror of New York's most exclusive bridal boutique, staring at the reflection of a girl she barely recognized. The gown draped over her body was a masterpiece, ivory silk flowing like water, delicate beading glimmering with every breath, its neckline modest yet elegant. It fit her perfectly, as though it had been crafted with her in mind, which she realized it probably had. "Absolutely stunning," gushed the boutique owner, Vivian Carter, a tall woman with sharp features who had been hired by William Harrington's staff to oversee every detail. "Mr. Harrington has exquisite taste." Clara's reflection looked hollow, her lips pale, her eyes distant. He chose this? She asked quietly. Oh yes, Vivian said with certainty. He was very specific. Nothing too revealing, nothing too modern. He wanted classic elegance, something that would make you look like the princess you are about to become. The word princess almost made Clara laugh, but the sound caught in her throat. Fairy tale princesses chose their destinies. She was being sold into one. Vivian knelt to adjust the hem of the gown. And the shoes are the perfect height. He didn't want you to be uncomfortable during the ceremony. Despite herself, Clara felt a flicker of surprise. She had expected a man who would buy a bride to care nothing for her comfort, yet everything so far had been thoughtful. The dress was modest. The makeup artist had been instructed to highlight. Her natural beauty and even the flowers chosen were white roses, her own favorite. There's one more thing, Vivian said with a small smile, opening a velvet box. From your fiancé. Clara's hands shook as she lifted the lid. Inside lay a delicate gold chain with a single pearl, simple and timeless. A note rested beneath it. I hope this brings you comfort. Vivian fastened the necklace around Clara's throat. He has remarkable taste, she said softly, and he clearly adores you already. Clara felt the pearl warm against her skin and shivered at the thought of William Harrington's hands. Hands that would soon hold the right to touch her whenever he wished. The thought made her stomach twist. Pre-wedding nerves? Vivian asked gently. Completely normal, my dear. Normal brides meet their grooms before the altar, Clara whispered. Vivian's hands stilled. You haven't met him yet? Clara shook her head, unable to speak. Oh, sweetheart, Vivian said kindly, moving to face her. I have worked with Mr. Harrington on several charity events. He is demanding, yes, powerful certainly, but not cruel. Whatever you are imagining, he is not a monster. He's 49, Clara said faintly, and I am 19. I understand how that must feel, Vivian replied gently. But age is just a number. I've seen couples decades apart live happily while others the same age could not stand each other. What if he expects things from me I cannot give? Clara whispered. Understanding crossed Vivian's face. Have you ever been with a man before? Clara's cheeks burned red, her silence answering the question. Vivian squeezed her shoulders. Listen carefully. William Harrington has a reputation, and it is not for being heartless with women. Quite the opposite. He is known for being patient, respectful, and kind. I wasn't chosen, Clara said bitterly. I was bought. Vivian tilted her head. Then why you? A man like him could have socialites, actresses, anyone in the city. Why would he choose a 19-year-old girl he's never met? Clara had no answer. Perhaps, Vivian said softly, because he is as lonely as you are. The words sank into Clara's chest like a stone in water. Lonely. Yes, that was exactly what she had been since her parents' deaths. But could a billionaire know loneliness? Men like him had everything, didn't they? Everything except what matters most, Vivian said as though reading her thoughts. Love, family, someone who cares for them, not their wealth. Clara stared at her reflection again. The gown, the pearl necklace, the polished image in the mirror looked like someone else entirely, but the fear in her eyes remained the same. What if I disappoint him? She whispered. Vivian smiled gently. And what if you don't? That night Clara returned to her small attic room for the last time. She lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling, the pearl necklace glinting faintly in the moonlight from her nightstand. In just 12 hours she would walk down the aisle of St. Helena's Cathedral. In 12 hours she would promise to love, honor, and obey a man she had never spoken to. Clara Anderson would disappear, and Mrs. William Harrington would be born. Despite her fear, she touched the necklace once more and felt a flicker of comfort. Tomorrow she would meet the man who had chosen her, and tomorrow her real life would begin, whether she was ready or not. The towering doors of St. Helena's Cathedral loomed before Clara Anderson, heavy with centuries of history and weight. Her arm was linked tightly through Uncle Richard's, his grip almost bruising. From the other side of the oak panels she could hear the swell of a string quartet and the murmur of gathered voices. Her bouquet of white roses trembled in her hands as Richard bent close and muttered, "Smile and don't embarrass us. This is the best thing that ever happened to you." Clara could only nod, her throat too tight to form words. Through the thin veil, everything appeared dreamlike, hazy, unreal. In a moment the doors opened, and her life would no longer be hers. The cathedral had been transformed into something from a fairy tale. Hundreds of white roses and soft baby's breath lined the pew's candles flickered golden light across the stone walls, and stained glass windows painted the floor in colors of blue and crimson. Yet Clara saw none of it. Her eyes were locked on the man waiting at the altar, William Harrington. He was not at all the cruel figure she had feared. He stood tall in a midnight blue suit that cut cleanly across broad shoulders, his silver touched, hair gleaming in the light. His features were strong, aristocratic yet softened by an expression Clara had not expected. His gray eyes, fixed entirely on her, were not cold. They were warm, uncertain and vulnerable, as if he too were holding his breath. The music swelled as Clara began her slow walk down the aisle. Step by step her pulse pounded in her ears. She could see him more clearly now, the tremor in his hands. As he adjusted his tie, the slight curve of a nervous smile, the way his eyes never left her face. For a moment she forgot the crowded cathedral and saw only him. At the altar, Richard thrust her hand into William's without ceremony and stepped back. William's hand was warm and steady, his grip gentle instead of possessive. "Hello, Clara," he said softly, low enough for only her to hear. "You look absolutely beautiful." Her lips parted in surprise at the kindness of his tone. "Thank you," she whispered. The ceremony began, but Clara barely registered the priest's words. She was too aware of the man standing beside her, of the way his thumb traced slow, soothing circles on the back of her hand. Was he trying to calm her nerves? It felt nothing like the domination she had feared. It felt like reassurance. When the time came for vows, William turned to her fully. The priest handed him a simple platinum band set with a single perfect diamond. Sliding it onto her finger, William's voice carried through the cathedral, strong but intimate. "Clara, I promise to honor you, to protect you, and to ensure you never want for anything. I promise to be patient, to be kind, and to earn whatever trust you may one day choose to give me." They were not the standard vows she expected. They were promises written for her, acknowledging that trust was not his right but something he hoped to earn. When it was Clara's turn, she stared up into his storm-gray eyes and found words she had not prepared. "I promise to try, William, to give this marriage a chance and to see you for who you are, not who I feared you might be." A subtle shift crossed his face, a look of relief, gratitude, and something deeper, hope. The priest declared them husband and wife. Clara's breath caught as William leaned in. She braced herself for the kiss she dreaded. The claim of ownership she had been told was his by law. Instead, she felt the soft brush of his lips on her forehead, tender, reverent, careful. When she opened her eyes in surprise, he was smiling at her with such gentleness her knees nearly gave way. "That is all for now," he whispered. "We will take everything else at your pace." Together they turned to face the sea of guests as applause echoed through the cathedral. But Clara barely noticed the crowd. Her thoughts raced, her heart thundering. This man was not the monster she had imagined. He had shown her respect when she had expected possession, tenderness when she had braced for coldness. Perhaps, she thought with a spark of something she dared not name, this might not be the nightmare she feared. The receiving line passed in a blur of congratulations from faces Clara had never seen before. New York's elite business associates, distant relatives of her uncle who had never cared for her until now, all eager to shake William's hand and be seen. Through it all, William stayed close at her side, his hand warm at the small of her back. Whenever someone addressed her, he included her in the conversation. Whenever she looked overwhelmed, he gently shifted attention to himself. When an older man chuckled crudely about how fortunate William was to have such a young bride, William's voice turned firm as steel. "I am the fortunate one," Clara is extraordinary. Later, as the music began to play, William led her onto the dance floor. For their first dance, Clara's chest tightened as his arms encircled her. She had never been held by a man before, and she froze. But William's hand rested respectfully at her waist, his other hand holding hers with a careful distance between their bodies. His gray eyes softened. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. Clara looked up at him, studying his face for any trace of deception. "You are not what I expected," she admitted. "What did you expect?" "Someone who would treat me as property. Someone cold, someone demanding." Her voice faltered. "Someone who would hurt you?" William finished gently. Clara lowered her eyes and nodded. His arms tightened slightly, protective rather than possessive. "Clara, whatever happens between us, I will never hurt you. Not physically, not emotionally, not if I can help it. You have my word." "Why?" she whispered before she could stop herself. "Why did you choose me? Vivian said you could have anyone in New York." William's gaze grew distant for a moment before returning to hers. "Because when I saw your photograph, I recognized something in your eyes. The same loneliness I see in the mirror every morning. I thought, perhaps we could be less lonely together." The honesty in his words tightened something deep inside. "I am lonely," she admitted softly. "So am I," he said. "But maybe we do not have to be anymore." As the music swelled, Clara let herself be guided across the floor, her heart racing in rhythm with the music. For the first time since the nightmare began, she wondered if perhaps her uncle had been right about one thing. Maybe this marriage was not the end, but a beginning. Hours later, the reception faded, and the couple entered the quiet of the elevator that carried them to William's penthouse. Clara's heart raced faster with every floor they passed. Tonight she was alone with him for the first time. "Clara," William said softly as the elevator neared the top, "I want you to know there are no expectations tonight. This is your home now. Whatever happens between us, if anything ever does, will be entirely your choice." The elevator doors opened, revealing a foyer of marble floors and crystal chandeliers. William placed a careful hand at her back, guiding her forward. "Welcome home, Mrs. Harrington." The penthouse was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the entire New York skyline glowing against the night. Elegant furniture and warm lighting filled the vast space. Vases of fresh white roses stood on every table. Clara's hand trembled as she touched a bloom. "You remembered the roses." "I asked my assistant to learn what you liked," William admitted quietly. "I wanted you to feel welcome." He showed her through the space, pointing out the kitchen, the dining room, the enormous living room, but it was the small details that caught her attention. The stack of literature books she loved, the blanket, draped over the sofa that seemed chosen just for her comfort. Finally, he opened the door to a beautifully prepared guest bedroom. "I thought you might prefer your own space, at least for now." Clara blinked at the sight of the queen-sized bed, the soft linens, the reading nook by the window, the desk. "This is for me?" "Of course," William said. "You are not a prisoner here. This is your home. You should have whatever makes you comfortable." "And where will you sleep?" she asked quietly. "My room is at the other end of the penthouse," he said, his tone calm. "We can live as roommates for as long as you wish. There is no pressure." Clara sank onto the bed, her wedding gown pooling around her. The weight of the day suddenly overcame her, and she began to cry, not from fear but from a wave of relief. William appeared instantly at the door, his face filled with concern. "Clara, what is it? Did I say something wrong?" "No," she said quickly, wiping at her eyes. "You've been kind. I was just so afraid. I imagined the worst, and instead you've been human." William's lips curved faintly. "More than human?" Clara laughed softly through her tears. "Better." He stepped inside but kept his distance. "I know this is not what you would have chosen, but I hope in time you will find some happiness here." She lifted her eyes, searching his face. "Why haven't you ever married before? You are successful, handsome, kind. Surely women have been interested." I dated, William admitted. But most cared more for my money or my name than for me. With you, it is different. You have no reason to pretend. Clara was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "That sounds lonely." "It is," William said. "But perhaps you understand that better than most." Their eyes met, and for the first time Clara believed him. She felt a connection, fragile but real. "Can I ask you for something?" she said, her voice almost too soft to hear. "Anything. Help me with this dress, the buttons are impossible." William froze, his breath catching. "Clara, I do not think—" "Please," she said simply. "I trust you." Something shifted in his expression. Slowly he stepped behind her, his fingers careful as he worked the tiny pearl buttons down the back of her gown. Each one revealed another glimpse of her skin, and she could feel the restraint in his every movement. When the last button was undone, he immediately stepped back. "There," he said roughly. "Good night, Clara." "William," she called softly as he turned to leave. He paused in the doorway. "Thank you for being gentle with me." His smile was warm, genuine. "Thank you for letting me be better than you expected." When he was gone, Clara changed into the silk nightgown laid out for her. Modest, comfortable, chosen with care. As she brushed her hair, she thought of the man who could have taken everything by right, but instead gave her respect. Lying down in her new bed, she wondered what it might feel like to truly kiss him, and the thought did not frighten her. It warmed her. Clara awoke to the scent of coffee and something warm drifting through the air. For a brief second, she expected to see the cracked ceiling of her attic bedroom, but instead sunlight poured across floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the sparkling expanse of New York. She sat up, surrounded by soft Egyptian cotton sheets, and remembered everything. The wedding, the vows, William's unexpected kindness, the way he had unbuttoned her dress with trembling restraint and then left her in peace. Slipping on the silk robe that had been placed for her, she padded, barefoot across the polished floors until she found the source of the aroma. William Harrington was at the stove, sleeves rolled up, moving with surprising ease as he flipped pancakes and stirred eggs. He turned when he heard her footsteps, his expression softening into a smile. "Good morning. I hope I didn't wake you. I wasn't sure what you liked, so I made a little of everything." The kitchen island was covered with fresh fruit, croissants, eggs, Benedict, and a tall stack of pancakes. Clara stared in disbelief. "You cooked all this?" William chuckled. "I've lived alone for a long time. I either learned to cook or survived on takeout. Besides, I enjoy it. It relaxes me." She accepted the coffee he offered, inhaling the rich aroma. "I never imagined a billionaire making breakfast in his own kitchen." "Most people wouldn't," William admitted, sliding a plate toward her. "But money can't buy the satisfaction of creating something with your own hands or the joy of taking care of someone." His voice faltered slightly, but then he steadied himself. "Someone you're beginning to care about." Clara's cheeks warmed. "We barely know each other." "That's true," William agreed. "But I know you volunteered at a children's hospital even while struggling yourself. I know you worked long hours in a house where you weren't wanted and still kept your dignity. I know you walked down that aisle yesterday though you were terrified, and you did it with grace." Clara blinked in surprise. "How do you know all that?" "I had my people find out everything about you before the wedding," William admitted gently. "I needed to know the kind of person I was asking to share my life with. I hope that doesn't upset you." She considered this as she took a bite of warm pancake. "What else did you learn?" "That you excelled in school despite your hardships. That you saved money for college even when most of it was taken from you. That the children at the hospital asked for you by name because you made them laugh with the voices you gave each character in their books." Clara set down her fork, torn between surprise and confusion. "You had someone watch me reading to children?" "I had someone confirm what I hoped was true," William said softly. "That you are a good person, who deserved better than the hand life dealt you." Silence fell for a moment, comfortable and strange at the same time. Clara realized how normal this felt. Sharing a meal, speaking honestly. No expectations pressed on her. "What happens now?" she asked finally. "What do you mean? I mean, what are we to each other? How does this work?" William placed his fork down and looked at her with calm seriousness. "Legally, you are my wife and I am your husband. But beyond that, we can be whatever you choose. Friends, if that is what makes you comfortable. Partners, if we discover we work well together. And perhaps something more if it comes naturally. But if it doesn't, if we never grow beyond respect, then we will still be two people who treated each other kindly." Clara studied his face, searching for deceit and finding none. "You really mean that, don't you?" "I do," William said. "I've lived alone for 24 years. Loneliness will not kill me. But I hope, given time, we might become friends at least." "I'd like that," Clara whispered. "I've never really had a friend before." William's eyes softened. "Never?" She shook her head. "After my parents died, I moved schools, I worked too much, and I never let anyone close. My parents were my best friends, and when I lost them, I couldn't imagine trusting anyone again." William reached across the table, his large hand closing gently over hers. "I understand. I lost both my parents when I was 25. I buried myself in work, building this empire as a way to escape the grief. It was not healthy, but it kept me moving forward. Still, it left me empty." Their fingers intertwined naturally, and Clara felt warmth spread through her chest. "Do you think they would be proud of you?" she asked softly. "I hope so," William answered, a wistful smile curving his lips. "I think they'd be more proud of the man I'm trying to become than the one I've been." "And what kind of man do you want to become?" William's thumb brushed across her knuckles. "The kind of man who deserves someone like you. Patient, kind, present. The kind who builds a life, not just a fortune." Clara's heart ached at the sincerity in his voice. She looked at him closely. "When you first saw my photograph, what else did you see in me?" He held her gaze unflinching. "Strength, resilience, beauty, of course, but more than that. I saw someone who had been broken, but not beaten. Someone who still carried hope despite everything." Her throat tightened. "I don't feel very hopeful most of the time." "But you are here," William said quietly. "You walked down that aisle when you could have run. You are sitting across from me now, giving this marriage a chance. That is hope, Clara." She looked down at their joined hands and realized he was right. Despite her fear, something deep inside her was beginning to shift. "What shall we do today?" she asked after a pause. "Whatever you want," William said with a faint smile. "I cleared the week so we could discover each other. We can explore the city, shop for what you need, or stay home and simply talk. It's your choice." Clara found herself smiling, lighter than she had felt in years. "I'd like to stay here and talk. I want to know more about the man I married." William's answering smile was brilliant, his eyes crinkling with relief and quiet joy. "And I want to know more about you." As they moved around the kitchen clearing dishes together, their movements already falling into a rhythm, Clara realized something unexpected. This life might not be the prison she had feared. It might just be a sanctuary. 3 weeks into the marriage, Clara and William had found a rhythm that surprised them both. Their days were filled with long conversations, quiet meals, and moments of ease that neither had expected. William showed her pieces of the city he loved, museums, theaters, bookstores that made her eyes light with joy. In return, Clara revealed glimpses of herself he had never imagined. A young woman with sharp wit, gentle kindness, and the kind of laughter that filled the silence of his penthouse with life for the first time in years. But tonight felt different. A storm raged outside the windows, lightning flashing against the glass. Clara tossed in her bed, trapped once again in the nightmare that had haunted her since her parents' death. She was back in the car, hearing the screech of tires, feeling the crash she could never stop. She woke with a cry, her heart pounding, tears streaming down her cheeks. The guest room felt too small, too lonely. Without thinking, she slipped out barefoot into the darkened penthouse. She found William in the living room, standing by the windows in a dark robe, watching the storm. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and his expression changed instantly when he saw her tear-stained face. "Clara, what's wrong?" "I'm sorry," she whispered, wrapping her arms around herself. "I didn't mean to disturb you. I just had the dream again." William crossed the room without hesitation. "The same one?" She nodded, her voice trembling. Over the weeks she had shared pieces of herself with him, and he knew the nightmares that had stalked her for years. "Come here," he said gently, lowering himself onto the sofa and opening his arms. Clara hesitated only a moment before stepping into his embrace. His warmth surrounded her, his hand smoothing her hair, his other hand rubbing slow circles on her back. She closed her eyes, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, feeling her breathing calm. "Tell me about them," William said softly. "Not about the accident, about your parents." Clara pressed her face to his chest, her words muffled but clear. "My mother was a teacher. She believed every child deserved to feel special, and she spent her life making sure they did. She gave more than she had, buying supplies, staying late, never giving up on anyone." "She sounds remarkable," William murmured. "She was, and my father, he was an architect. Not the kind who built towers, but homes designed for families with disabled children. Homes that fit their needs instead of forcing them to adapt. He said everyone deserved a place where they belonged." Her voice cracked. "They were good people, William. They loved me so much. When they died, it felt like all that love died with them." William's arms tightened around her. "It didn't die. I see it in you every day, the kindness you show, the strength you carry. Their love is still alive in you, Clara." She pulled back just enough to see his face, startled by the intensity in his voice. "How can you be so sure?" "Because I see what they made," he said, cupping her cheek. "They raised a woman who volunteers for sick children despite her own grief, who worked herself to exhaustion in a house where she was unwanted, who walked down an aisle to marry a stranger but still gave him a chance to prove he wasn't a monster. That kind of resilience doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from being loved deeply once, and you still carry that love." Tears welled again, but these were not only grief. They were recognition, healing, the feeling of finally being seen. "I miss them so much," she whispered. "I know you do, and you always will. But they wouldn't want your life to end with theirs. They would want you to live, to love, to be happy again. What if I don't know how? What if I'm too broken?" "You are not broken," William said firmly, his thumb brushing away her tears. "Wounded, yes. Grieving, yes. But not broken. Do you know how I know? Because 3 weeks ago, a terrified 19-year-old girl married a man 30 years older, and instead of shutting him out, she sat at his table, shared his meals, laughed at his jokes, and tonight she let him hold her when she was hurting. That is not the behavior of someone broken. That is the behavior of someone who is stronger than she realizes." Clara stared into his eyes, her heart pounding at what she saw there. "William, do you have feelings for me? Real feelings?" He was quiet for a long moment, his hand still resting against her cheek. At last he whispered, "Yes, I do. I'm falling in love with you, Clara. Not with the idea of you, not with just your beauty, though you are breathtaking. I'm falling in love with your strength, your kindness, your resilience. I'm falling in love with the way you argue with me about books, the way you laugh when you think I'm not listening, the way you make this place feel alive again." Her breath caught. "I know it's soon," he continued quickly, his voice unsteady. "I know our situation is complicated. I'm not asking you to feel the same way. I just needed you to know this is real for me." Clara studied him, seeing not the ruthless businessman she had feared, but a man vulnerable and afraid of her silence. Slowly she whispered, "I think I might be falling in love with you too." His expression transformed, hope lighting his features. "Truly? You're not who I expected," she said softly, her hand resting on his chest. I thought my husband would be demanding, selfish, controlling. Instead, I found someone who listens to me, who holds me when I cry, who makes me feel safe. Someone who sees the best in me when I can't see it myself. William's voice was rough with emotion. You are cherished, Clara, more than you can imagine. She leaned forward until their foreheads touched. I'm scared, William. I've never felt this way before. I'm scared too, he admitted. I never thought I would have this chance. I never thought someone like you would want someone like me. You're not damaged, Clara whispered. You're just careful with your heart. And I understand that. Their eyes locked, the storm outside flashing light across the room. Clara closed the distance and pressed her lips softly to his. The kiss was gentle, tentative, but it sent a current of warmth through them both. When they parted, both were breathless. Now, she whispered, we stop being afraid of what this might become and let it happen naturally. William's smile was radiant as he whispered back, I love you, Clara Harrington. Tears filled her eyes as she answered, I love you too, William Harrington. Outside, thunder rolled across the city, but inside the penthouse, two lonely hearts had finally found home in each other. 2 months into the marriage, Clara and William had grown close in ways neither had imagined. Their conversations stretched. Late into the night, their laughter filled the penthouse and the once stark home had become warm with Clara's presence. But now a storm brewed outside their sanctuary, not in the sky, but in the world of business. The Harrington Corporation faced its first serious threat in over a decade. Morrison Enterprises, a rival conglomerate, had launched a hostile takeover bid, spreading rumors to undermine William's leadership. Stock prices wavered, board members grew restless, and the press circled like vultures. Clara noticed the change in William before anyone else. He came home later, tension etched in every line of his face, his eyes shadowed with worry. Tonight, he sat in his study, his tie loosened, papers scattered across the desk, his head in his hands. Clara lingered in the doorway, hesitant. William, she said softly, you haven't eaten all day. He looked up, exhaustion in his eyes. I can't think about food right now. Morrison is using every weapon he has, and if I don't stop him, thousands of employees will lose their jobs. Families will suffer. It feels like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff. Clara stepped closer, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her stomach. Then let me stand with you. He blinked at her, surprised. Clara, this isn't your burden. You're my husband, she replied firmly. Your burdens are mine too. Let me help, even if it's only by listening. William leaned, back in his chair studying her. You amaze me, he murmured. Most people run from problems like this. You step closer. She smiled faintly. I spent my whole life surrounded by people who treated me as a burden. No one ever wanted my thoughts or my help. If you'll let me, I want to give you both. Something in his chest loosened at her words. He gestured to the seat across from him. All right, tell me, Clara. If you were in my place, what would you do? Clara glanced at the reports and headlines spread across the desk. Morrison is trying to make you look ruthless, like you don't care about people. So show everyone the opposite. Remind them you're human. Remind them you care. William frowned. Business doesn't reward sentiment, Clara. Maybe not, she said thoughtfully. But people do. You told me once that you built this empire to escape your grief. That means you built it for survival, not for connection. Maybe now it's time to show the world the man behind the company. William leaned forward, intrigued. Go on. Host a press conference not about the numbers but about the people. Highlight the scholarships your company has funded, the hospitals you've donated to, the jobs you've created. Speak from the heart, William. Let them see the man I see every day. If Morrison wants to paint you as a villain, show the world that you are a protector instead. He stared at her, stunned by her insight. That could work. It's risky, but it could shift the narrative. Clara reached across the desk and took his hand. You once told me you wanted to be the kind of man who deserved me. Prove it to them too. Not for me, not for the board, but for yourself." William squeezed her hand, pride softening his tired features. "You are extraordinary, Clara. I thought I was marrying someone fragile, someone I needed to shield. Instead, I found a partner who strengthens me when I falter." The next morning, William did exactly as Clara suggested. The press conference was packed, cameras flashing, journalists eager for blood. But when William spoke, his voice carried not just authority but sincerity. He spoke of his parents and their values, of his vision to create more than wealth, of his desire to leave behind a legacy of care as well as success. He named employees by name, telling their stories, reminding the world that behind every skyscraper were the lives of ordinary families. The response was electric. Headlines shifted from scandal to admiration. Board members rallied behind him and stock prices stabilized. Morrison's campaign lost momentum overnight. When William returned home that evening, Clara was waiting by the window, her heart in, her throat. He entered with a rare smile, one filled with triumph and gratitude. "It worked. You saved us, Clara." She shook her head. "No, you saved yourself. I just reminded you who you are." He crossed the room and pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "Never doubt the power you have, Clara Harrington. You are not just my wife. You are the reason I believe in myself again." Her arms wrapped around him, tears burning her eyes. "And you're the reason I believe in love again." They stood together as the city lights shimmered below. Two people who had begun as strangers now bound by something stronger than circumstance. Clara realized she was no longer afraid of belonging to William Harrington. She was proud to belong, with him. Autumn settled over New York with crisp winds and golden leaves, but Clara's heart grew heavy when the phone call came. Her Uncle Richard had suffered a heart attack. For a moment she stood frozen in the grand kitchen, the voice of the caller fading into a blur, memories of his cruelty, his disdain, his cold laughter when he told her she was being sold flashed through her mind. She had every reason to turn away, to harden her heart. Yet when she whispered the news to William, her first words were, "We have to go." William studied her closely, his gray eyes full of concern. "Clara, after everything he's done to you, you owe him nothing." "I know," she said softly. "But he's still family, and if I don't go, I'll regret it." Within the hour, William arranged for their car, and they drove to the hospital. The sterile white corridors smelled of antiseptic. Machines beeped in rhythm with fragile lives, and Clara's stomach twisted as she approached Richard's room. Margaret sat in a chair at his bedside, her face pale and drawn. For the first time, Clara saw her aunt not as stern and cruel, but as an old woman weary with fear. Richard lay propped against the pillows, his once powerful frame now diminished, his skin sallow, tubes and wires snaking from his body. His eyes flickered open as Clara entered, surprise flashing across them. "You came," he rasped. Clara stood at the foot of the bed, torn between anger and pity. "Yes, I came." He gave a bitter laugh that ended in a cough. "After the way I treated you, I didn't think you would." "I almost didn't," Clara admitted, "but I couldn't stay away. Not when I remembered that once, before the bitterness, before the debts. You were my father's brother, and he loved you." Richard's eyes filled with moisture. "Your father was a better man than I'll ever be. I lost myself when he died. The debt, the anger, it consumed me. I looked at you and saw only another burden when I should have seen the only piece of him left. I was wrong, Clara. So terribly wrong." Margaret's voice trembled as she reached for Clara's hand. "We both were. We let our pain turn us cruel. And still, you found it in yourself to come." Clara swallowed the lump in her throat. "I hated you for what you did, but I don't want that hate to define me. I came because I wanted to forgive, even if I don't forget." Richard's voice cracked. "You've become a woman your parents would be proud of. Strong, compassionate, far better than we deserved. I don't expect you to ever call me family again, but I needed to say I am sorry." Tears blurred Clara's vision as she stepped closer. For a moment, she simply stood there, staring at the man who had caused her so much pain. Then, with a quiet breath, she reached out and took his frail hand. "I forgive you, Uncle Richard, not for you, but for me. I won't carry this weight any longer." William stood quietly by the doorway, pride in his eyes as he watched the woman he loved turn her pain into grace. Later, when they left the hospital, he drew her close against the chill of the night air. "You amaze me, Clara," he murmured. Most people would have walked away and left him to his fate. "I almost did," she confessed. "But forgiveness isn't about what they deserve. It's about who I want to be. And I don't want to live with bitterness in my heart." He kissed her temple tenderly. "That strength, that compassion, that is what makes you extraordinary. You don't just heal yourself, Clara. You heal the people around you even when they don't deserve it." She looked up at him, tears glistening in her blue eyes. "And you make me believe it's safe to be that person again." As they drove home, Clara rested her head on William's shoulder. For the first time, she felt as though the past no longer had chains around her. Her future was hers now, and it was bound to the man sitting beside her. Snow blanketed New York in soft white. Drifts in the penthouse glowed with warm golden light as Christmas approached. Clara decorated the towering tree in the living room, carefully hanging ornaments, her laughter filling the space as William handed her each piece. The home that had once felt cold and empty now pulsed with warmth, garlands lining the banister, candles flickering on every surface, the scent of pine and cinnamon lingering in the air. On Christmas Eve, William appeared from his study carrying a small wrapped box. He handed it to Clara with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. "Merry Christmas, my love." She unwrapped the gift carefully, revealing a delicate silver locket engraved with her initials. When she opened it, she found 2 tiny photographs inside. On one side were her parents, smiling warmly as if time had never touched them. On the other side was a recent photo William had taken of the two of them together, Clara laughing in his arms. Her breath caught as tears welled in her eyes. "How did you—" "I had Daniel track down your family's old albums," William said gently. "I wanted you to carry them with you always. They are part of who you are. And I wanted them close to your heart." Clara threw her arms around him, overwhelmed. "It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received. You are the most beautiful gift I've ever been given." William whispered against her hair. "You have made this house a home, Clara. You've made me believe in love again." When it was her turn, she handed him a slim envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter and a deed. His brows furrowed as he read. "What is this?" Clara smiled nervously. "It's a children's library. I used the trust fund you gave me to buy a small building downtown. It's in your name, William, but I want it to be for every child who needs a safe place to read, to dream, to imagine. You once told me you wanted to be the kind of man who built a life, not just a fortune. This is part of that legacy." Emotion flickered across his face, raw and unguarded. "Clara, this means more than anything I've ever owned. You didn't have to give me this. I wanted to," she said softly. "Because you gave me freedom. Because you gave me love. I wanted to give you something that would last." William gathered her into his arms and kissed her deeply, a kiss filled with gratitude and devotion. When they finally parted, he pressed his forehead to hers. "You are everything I never knew I needed." That night they curled up together before the fire, wrapped in blankets, the city lights twinkling below like fallen stars. Clara's head rested on William's chest, her fingers tracing lazy circles on his hand. "William," she said quietly, "do you ever think about children?" He paused, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. "I do. I thought I'd missed my chance, that I was too old, too set in my ways, but with you, yes, I think about it." Her smile was tender. "I've always dreamed of being a mother, of giving a child the love I lost too soon." William tilted, her chin to meet his gaze, his gray eyes glowing with warmth. "Then let us dream it together. One day, when you are ready, we will build that family. Not because it's expected, not because of legacy, but because it will be born from love. Tears filled Clara's eyes as she kissed him softly. You've already given me everything I ever wanted. A home, a partner, love. Children would just be the blessing on top of the miracle we already have. The fire crackled, snow drifted, gently outside, and in the quiet intimacy of the night, Clara realized she was no longer the frightened girl forced into a marriage she hadn't chosen. She was a woman who had found a love deeper than she thought possible, a love that had turned fear into hope, and loneliness into family. And in William's arms, as Christmas morning approached, she finally felt what she had prayed for all her life. She felt safe, she felt cherished, she felt truly home.